In British-controlled India, a solution to a problem backfired and coined a phrase, the Cobra Effect. Let's learn all about it on this week's Rewind episode of The Internet Says It's True. Welcome back to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds made up but is really true, part of the WCVE podcast experience, available on all podcast platforms, also the NPR app and website. My name is Michael Kent. This is episode 223, and this week is a Rewind episode. I'm working on a new episode for next week that should be available soon on Patreon. I'm working on trying to get a week ahead so we can do early releases on Patreon again. Next week's episode is all about cobras, so I thought that it would be a good opportunity to revisit an episode we did a long time ago about the Cobra Effect in India, and I've never done a Rewind episode on this story. I wanted to remind you that you can get every episode ad-free, and hopefully now a week early, and see videos of the guest interviews on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. You can join at any level there to get access, whether it's $1 a month or $10 a month. And when you join, you get all kinds of goodies and extras, as well as discounts on merch. Once again, patreon.com/Michael Kent.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
So this is a story we did all the way back in October of 2021. So that was year 2 of the podcast. And it's a fascinating concept. You'll notice that we have some themes of COVID in the episode. That's because, that's what was happening in the world still at the time. And you'll hear about that. But this is something that you can use to refer to in your regular life. The Cobra Effect.
Hey, Michael, it's Lance. I was wondering if you've ever heard of the Cobra Effect. It deals with a story about how India tried to get rid of snakes, and it totally backfired on them. And it's since been used as an economic theory that all, for some reason, sounds like a stew that I would really like to see you do an episode on. So please, check that out. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. I had never heard of this, so I looked it up, and it's kind of an interesting story, the truthiness of which is debatable, and we'll get into that. Let's just get into the story. Back in 1855, a British publisher named Henry George Bond printed a book of proverbs. It included a phrase about unintended consequence that is now pretty well known. Here it is. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It was a rephrasing of an ancient Latin phrase, facilis descensus averno. The descent to hell is easy. Today's story is one about a perverse incentive. That's the fancy way of describing a situation in which a problem is addressed with a solution, and instead of fixing the problem, the opposite result occurs. We'll talk about a few notable examples, but I found one from Mark Twain. It was in his autobiography, and he's talking about his wife's offer to his butler, George Griffin. He wrote, quote, "Once in Hartford, the flies were so numerous for a time and so troublesome that Mrs. Clemens conceived the idea of paying George a bounty on all the flies he might kill. The children saw an opportunity here for the acquisition of sudden wealth." End quote. I know that if I was a kid and my mother paid me for every fly I caught, I might find ways to accidentally leave the door open. And that's what the Cobra Effect is. The Cobra Effect is a term that sociologists and economists use to describe the same problem. It comes from a story told by economist Horst Siebert, and he was describing something that happened back when India was under British rule. The story reportedly happened in British colonial India, so we're talking pre-1947. In the city of Delhi, the number of deadly venomous cobras was increasing, and the British government wanted to do something about it before it affected tourism and trade. So they offered a cash reward for every dead cobra. Initially, this started working. Snake catchers scrambled throughout the city to try and find and kill all the cobras. But then people began to realize something. The cost to breed and raise snakes was less than the bounty they were being offered, and they could profit from snake farming. So the government soon found they were receiving far more dead cobras than there were in the city. People had started breeding and raising cobras with the intent on killing them and receiving a monetary reward from their government. Once the authorities in charge realized what was happening, they put an end to the bounty program. But this didn't end the issue. All of the captive snakes that were being farmed for bounties got released back into the wild to breed and populate naturally. And Delhi's cobra problem was now twice as bad as it was before. unintended consequences. I'll tell you more in a minute. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent.
We're living through the most dynamic time in human history, and what we do as leaders matter. We are the ones that create the leverage to shift directions of our companies, our nonprofits, and our communities. As a leader or an emerging leader, please join me for a dynamic conversation with top thought leaders, academics, and executives to learn more about how to elevate your leadership. I'm Maureen Metcalf. Join us at the WCBE podcast experience at wcbe.org.
Now let's get back to the story. The story about the cobras in Delhi is often pointed to as the Cobra Effect. What happens when you set out to do something good and it flies back in your face? As I said earlier, German economist Horst Siebert wrote about this in his 2001 book, Der Cobra Effect. But the name of the podcast is The Internet Says It's True, and I researched it all week, and I couldn't find any historical evidence that the Delhi Cobra problem is anything more than an anecdote. And it very well may have happened. It sounds like something that would have happened, but I couldn't find any support for it being anything more than a parable. But whether it's true or not, the phenomenon is well known, and there are so many other well-documented examples of the Cobra Effect that we know actually happened. One such story comes from Vietnam in 1902. Hanoi had become modernized with a sewer system, but the sewers were an optimal place for rats to live. So with the building of sewers throughout the city, the rat population thrived. With the rats came disease, and the local population felt the rats were a menace. They were eating food and going through garbage. Paul Doumer, the Governor General of Indochina, announced a bounty program on the rats. Citizens could receive money as long as they proved they'd killed the rats by turning in the rat tail. But sure enough, the Cobra Effect showed its face, or tail. The rat population didn't decline, it thrived, and strangely, officials started noticing that the rats in the city were running around without tails. After all, if the rat catchers severed the tails, those animals were free to go back into the sewers and make more of those money-making rodents. If we go back to India, there's a more modern example of the Cobra Effect that deals with pollution and cars. In 2019, to cut down on dangerous levels of smog in the city, New Delhi instituted an odd-even rule, where cars whose license plates ended in an even number drove on even-numbered days and odd-numbered on odd-numbered days. It was predicted that this would decrease air pollution by 12 to 15%. It didn't. Instead, the amount of smog and air pollution increased. Mexico City had tried the exact same thing 30 years prior with the exact same result. The problem was that people were buying more cars to skirt the odd-even rule. They said, if I can't drive one with an odd license plate, I'll buy another car and have an even license plate. Not everyone did that, but enough to completely negate the 12 to 15% decrease in emissions and then some. There are plenty more real-world examples of the Cobra Effect, like gun buyback programs that backfire or environmental incentives that put money in the pockets of the people who create the environmental problems. Here's an example of that. When HFC 23 coolant was found to be an environmental pollutant in the EU, a reward was offered for the destruction of the pollutant. This led the creators of HFC 23 to just make more of it so they could make millions off of destroying it. Finally, we come to a very real, very recent example. Last October, a local plasma donation center at Brigham Young University offered $100 to anyone donating plasma that was COVID-19 convalescent. In other words, if you had COVID-19 and your blood had developed the antibodies, you could donate plasma and make money. Fast forward to BYU issuing the following memo to all students. Quote, BYU is deeply troubled by accounts of individuals who have intentionally exposed themselves or others to COVID-19 with the hope of getting the disease and being paid for plasma that contains COVID-19 antibodies. Students who are determined to have intentionally exposed themselves or others to the virus will be immediately suspended from the university and may be permanently dismissed. End quote. The Cobra Effect strikes again. When lockdown orders were mandated around the world to help defeat COVID, many wondered if the result would be a spike in COVID, specifically in areas where many family members live together under one roof and would be spending much more time exposed to each other than normal. So how do we avoid the Cobra Effect? The only thing we can do is consider every possible issue. Agna Nainte, a digital transformation consultant, recommends drawing an issue tree, a flowchart of every possible issue and outcome from your solution. She also recommends small-scale testing before going big. Finally, she suggests we study historical attempts. In my research for this week, I was amazed at the amount of real-world examples I was able to find. And most of these revolved around the human factor of desperation and money. So next time you set out to get rid of some cobras of your own, consider what people are willing to do to get paid. Now, it's time for the part of the podcast where I call a friend, and today I'm calling Jimmy Mak. Jimmy is the head writer at Shadowbox Live, a sketch comedy and rock and roll theater in Columbus, Ohio, and he's the author of the book, Daddies Shouldn't Break Dance. Mr. Mak, it's good to see you this morning.
It is great to see you, Michael, as always.
I've had you on the show probably just about as much as anyone's been on the show.
Is it fair to say that I'm the Robin to your Batman?
I would not ever say that, but I would consider myself the Robin to your Batman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just both Robin. How sad is that?
That would be a fantastic premise for a sketch. Just all of the. Have you done a sketch on just the secondary guys, the co-host guys? Like
no, like there's just the sidekick club or something.
The sidekick club, and it's all superheroes. But then there's one like late night sidekick, like an Andy Richter comes in. And he was like, I was told this is where we meet, and they just discuss. It's like it's a group meeting where they can just discuss their ambitions of wanting to be the main guy.
I'm absolutely stealing that idea. You should know that.
Please do. I just want a writing credit. I'm happy to have you back on this week. Last week, for the first question, I had Jackie Tone from Glow on the show, and she challenged me to do an Al Pacino impression, and I failed hard. I thought that maybe I could do an impression like on the fly, and I couldn't. Yeah. I can't do impressions apparently. So again, this week we're not going to do the impression, but we'll do a joke. So if you get it right, you have to tell a joke. Actually, we'll do a tether. So if you get it wrong, you have to tell a joke. And if you get it right, I'll tell you a joke.
Okay. All right.
So here's your question. The Cobra Effect refers to what? Is it A, when a solution to a problem ends with an unintended consequence? B, when a person identifies more with the bad guys, like Team Cobra and G.I. Joe? Or C, when an animal has a natural defense mechanism like the expanding hood on a cobra?
Wow. I'm going to go with A.
When a solution to a problem ends with an unintended consequence. You are correct. That is what the Cobra Effect is. And the whole reason was this story about when British controlled India. They were trying to get rid of cobras. They started paying people a bounty to kill cobras. But people started breeding and raising cobras just to kill them because it was cheaper to do that.
Oh my God.
and the worst part is like when the government caught on, they quit the program. But now there were like 3 times as many cobras in Delhi because everyone just released them into the wild when they couldn't make money off of them anymore. So now economists and sociologists use the Cobra Effect to refer to a story of unintended consequence.
Yeah, that's fantastic and pretty creative, you know?
Yeah, there have been so many parallels, and there have even been modern parallels with this. But I have to tell you a joke. So Here's your joke. Why do Canada geese hiss when you get close to them?
Why? Because
biologically it's coded in their genes to do so when threatened.
That is the best joke I have ever heard in my entire life.
I I know that you are a fan of the anti-joke, Jimmy, so I chose that joke specifically for you.
Thank you.
Oh, boy. All right. For the second question, we're playing for 20 push-ups right here on the podcast.
Oh, all right.
Do you think you could do 20 push-ups?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident as an old guy that I could still do 20. Now, if 21, then we're talking some questionable stuff. But 20, absolutely.
Yeah, you turned me on to the 7-minute workout. The 7-minute. What's the app? It's just called 7 minutes or something.
It's just called the 7-minute workout. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did that for a while, and then I said, it's not that I don't have 7 minutes, I just don't like working out during them. So we're gonna. I think I might be able to do 20. There was a time I could do about 40 uninterrupted.
Yeah,
but that was a pre-pandemic form.
Right.
So one example of the Cobra Effect that we haven't talked about yet is the cash for ash scandal. This happened in Ireland in 2012. People were given subsidies to use wood pellets instead of fossil fuels to heat their homes. Which one of these was the result? A, Ireland ran out of wood pellets. B, the gas industry offered an even bigger subsidy. Or C, people started heating their homes and empty barns year-round to get free money from the government.
I hate that I'm this cynical, but I'm going to go with C.
You are correct.
Yes.
It's a horrible thing that happened. The government department made the subsidy more valuable than the cost of wood pellets to heat boilers. Subsequently, boilers were left on 24/7, pumping out more CO2 than ever. One farmer who heated an empty chicken shed anticipated making 1 million pounds over 20 years, costing the UK government almost 500 million pounds. The whole thing was just, it was an unintended consequence. That was the Cobra Effect.
I mean, that sounds like that could be like a really good Daniel Day-Lewis movie, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to try to do 20 push-ups.
Okay.
And I'm going to get this microphone onto the floor. So
do you want me to do them with you, Michael, just to make you feel like, we're in this together?
If you haven't done your 7 minutes today, you can.
I haven't. Yeah, I'll do it with you.
Okay, so I am now laying on the floor.
Okay. Me too.
And I'm going to do the push-ups into the microphone. Okay, here we go. We're going to start. Here we go. I'll count them out. All right.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm already hurting. 5, 6 push-ups. 7, 8, 9. Here we go. Halfway. 10, 11. Can you hear my voice shaking? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I'm hurting. 18, 19, 20 push-ups. I can do it. You know what you can't see on the podcast right now is how much I'm sweating.
I trust that you are, though.
I don't have to do yard work today. Okay, that's a good wake up. We're recording this at 10 in the morning. And, give me a moment. I'm not going to do any more physical challenges for these.
That was it.
Do you remember the running prize for question 3?
No. Is it a sticker?
It's always a sticker.
Okay, I guess.
It is a sticker.
I think I'm waiting. I'm still waiting on like 17 of those right now.
I owe you at least 3. All the way going back to the old sticker, tell me what to Google. And the only way you can get these stickers, other than being on the quiz, is if you join Patreon. If you join Patreon, it's $1 a month, and you get a sticker. That's not all you get. That's not a good deal. If that's all you get, you get to watch all the videos from. There's a whole bunch of stuff you get. Anyway, question 3. Here it is. What is the name for someone who studies snakes? Is it A, herpetologist, B, amphibiologist, or C, herpaphrodite?
Ooh. I'm going to go A.
You are 3 for 3. Herpetologist is a zoologist who studies reptiles and amphibians, including snakes.
I'm a really good guesser. Have you noticed that?
I feel like you knew that one.
I didn't. I guessed.
Wow. That's a pretty good guess. Yeah, thanks. It's one of those times when the Latin word comes in, I guess.
Yeah, I really wanted to say C just because I thought it was so absurd that it may be true.
I wouldn't put it past me to put a weird, absurd answer in. I'm still sweating from the push-ups. I'm never doing that on this podcast again. If you're listening to this podcast, you've just witnessed a one and only. That one is not coming back because can you hear? I'm like wheezing from 20 push-ups. This is horrible.
You need to start smoking so you have a better excuse. You know?
That's right. Question 4. For this question, we're playing for 5 Twitter followers. If you get it right, I'll do my best to get you 5. If you get it wrong, you got to get me 5.
All right.
The king cobra is the longest species of venomous snake in the world. Which one of these is their average length? These are all ranges. So which one of these ranges is their average length? A, 4 to 6 feet. B, 10 to 13 feet. Or C, 2 to 3 feet.
E?
It is B. You're 4 for 4.
Yes!
According to Sarah Viernam, a herpetologist in Madison, Wisconsin, the king cobra is the longest species of venomous snake in the world. Though they can reach lengths of up to 18 feet, their average length is 10 to 13. An especially long snake could be as tall as a person, meaning that an angry king cobra could literally look you in the eye.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's
Can you
crazy.
imagine? I just watched the old Nat Geo. There's a Nat Geo special on king cobras that someone has taken like the old VHS and put it on YouTube, and you can watch the whole thing.
Wow.
It's great. It's from 1997. So I graduated high school in 1997, and I was like, oh, that's not old. I was looking for something really old, but then I was thinking like that's actually pretty old. It's pretty old.
So do you like snakes? Are you afraid of them?
I wouldn't say I'm afraid of them, but if I'm hiking and I see one, I jump a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's only happened twice.
Okay.
I do a lot of hiking with like for photography, but I've not come across anything venomous ever. I was hiking in the Poconos this summer because I had a couple shows up there, and the area where I was is known for timber rattlers, and so I was fully prepared and almost excited to see one, and I didn't see any.
Okay.
I didn't see any.
I saw a rattlesnake when we were in Big Bend Park in southern tip of Texas.
Yeah, I've been down near there. I did a show in Alpine, Texas. Were you near it? Were you close to it?
We drove by it. Like it was, and it's just all desert. So you could see everything. And it was just basically right off the side of the road, just kind of like curled up and the tail was going and everything.
That's cool.
We saw a wildcat, we had a whole idea of putting up the tent and everything. But after we saw the rattlesnake and the wildcat, 3 of us big dudes piled into the back of the hatchback and slept.
I would do the same thing, man. I would do the same thing. All right. Well, there's one more question, and this one is for all the marbles. If you get it wrong, I'm banning you from the show. Never, ever to be asked on again.
I'm like Chevy Chase and SNL now. Okay. All right.
Yeah. You're nicer than Chevy Chase.
Oh,
in your opinion, where is the best place to learn what's going on in the world?
Well, first of all, why do you want to know what's like? I say just go to a dog park and like hang out with those guys because those people are like really nice and they have dogs and they're not stressed about anything. But I guess the answer is Rachel Maddow's sunroom. You just sit there, you're drinking a couple Mr. Misties or whatever, and I think that's where you're going to get all the information.
You're probably right. And the reason I ask you this is because I do follow you on Twitter. You are quite aware of political, social issues. And I like to ask people, like, where, in your opinion, is the best place to learn what's going on? Because people these days get information from everywhere, from podcasts, from Twitter, from their Facebook bubble. So in a real world instance, I really love the dog park answer because that's where you can actually meet other humans. But in humanity, in your world, because you're not going to be invited to Rachel Maddow's house.
No, I know. I've asked, but they politely said no. I would probably say Twitter, honestly, because I think, you get all of the different viewpoints. Most people there are pretty good with links as far as where they're getting their information. And it's so fast and up to date that, generally I know what's going on before a lot of people just because they they're so fast there.
It's super fast. That's a correct answer. You went
Yes.
5 for 5, and when you go 5 for 5 on this show, there is this new sound effect that we play. Here it is.
You did it! Congratulations!
You did it, Jimmy Mak.
I
You did it. That's all for this week. If you are in Central Ohio, you can catch Jimmy Mak on stage at Shadowbox Live. Tickets are available at shadowboxlive.org, and you can follow him on Twitter. It's at Jimmy Mak, and it's the number 1, Jimmy Mak 1. So JIMMYMAK 1. It has been great having you on the show again, Jimmy.
Always great to see you, my friend.
That's all for this week. Thank you to Lance for the show topic and to Jimmy Mak for being my guest. Here's a kid you don't know.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. Don't forget to join up on Patreon if you want to see the unedited video of the guest appearance or to hear bonus episodes. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. Also, if you learned something that you didn't already know from the show, please visit iTunes and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That's the rule. You gotta do it. That helps us a ton because that's how the algorithm works. To get the podcast suggested to more people. And that way we can keep learning something new. If the internet says it's true.
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help make this show possible. Sean Brown, Catherine Morgan, Taylor Hurt, Tony Ford, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Matt McVeigh, Jim Martin, Joanne Martin, and the show's official Emperor Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and additional music this week was from Asher Falero and Kevin McLeod under Creative Commons license. All audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 USC Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.